Well, thank you very much, and good evening. I want to begin by thanking our hosts for the invitation to participate in tonight's debate. And I also want to say what a privilege it is to be sharing the podium this evening with Dr. Williamson. We were on the John Gormley show earlier today and had a great time, and I found that not only is he a very good thinker, but also a very nice guy. And so I'm glad to be sharing the podium with him tonight. And I hope that our discussion will be a practical help to you in your own personal thinking about this most important subject. Now, in order to answer the question, does God exist, we've got to ask ourselves two further questions. First, what reasons are there to think that God exists? And secondly, what reasons are there to think that God does not exist? Accordingly, in tonight's debate, I'm going to defend two basic contentions. First, there is no good reason to think that God does not exist. And secondly, there are good reasons to think that God exists. Consider then my first contention, that there's no good reason to think that God does not exist. I'll leave it up to Dr. Williamson to present arguments against God's existence, and then I'll respond to them in my next speech. I simply note in passing that if he is to justify a negative answer to the question before us this evening, then he owes us such arguments. So let's turn then to my second contention, that there are good reasons to think that God exists. Let me briefly sketch just some of these reasons. First, God is the best explanation of the origin of the universe. Have you ever asked yourself where the universe came from? Why everything exists instead of just nothing? Well, typically, atheists have said that the universe is just eternal and uncaused, and that's all. But there are good reasons, both philosophically and scientifically, to doubt that this is the case. Philosophically, the idea of an infinite past seems absurd. If the universe never had a beginning, that means that the number of past events in the history of the universe is infinite. But mathematicians recognize that the existence of an actually infinite number of things leads to self-contradictions. For example, what is infinity minus infinity? Well, mathematically, you get self-contradictory answers. This shows that infinity is just an idea in your mind, not something that exists in reality. Now, I've heard through the grapevine that Dr. Williamson thinks that his sister has an actual infinitude of junk in her basement. But if she's philosophically astute, she can turn back that brotherly aspersion. David Hilbert, who is perhaps the greatest mathematician of the 20th century, states that the infinite is nowhere to be found in reality, not even in Williamson's basement. It neither exists in nature nor provides a legitimate basis for rational thought. The role that remains for the infinite to play is solely that of an idea. But that entails that since past events are not just ideas but are real, the number of past events must be finite. Therefore, the series of events can't just go back and back forever. Rather, the universe must have begun to exist. This conclusion has been confirmed by remarkable discoveries in astronomy and astrophysics. In one of the most startling developments of modern science, we now have pretty strong evidence that the universe is not eternal in the past, but had an absolute beginning about 13 billion years ago in a cataclysmic event known as the Big Bang. What makes the Big Bang so startling is that it represents the origin of the universe from literally nothing. For all matter and energy, even physical space and time themselves, came into being at the Big Bang. As the physicist Paul Davies explains, the coming into being of the universe, as discussed in modern science, is not just a matter of imposing some sort of organization upon a previous incoherent state, but literally the coming into being of all physical things from nothing. Now, of course, alternative theories have been proposed over the years to try to avoid this absolute beginning, but none of these theories has commended itself to the scientific community as more plausible than the Big Bang theory. In fact, in 2003, Arvind Borde, Alan Guth, and Alexander Vilenkin we're able to prove that any universe which is on average in a state of cosmic expansion cannot be eternal in the past, but must have an absolute beginning. Vilenkin pulls no punches. He writes, "It is said that an argument is what convinces reasonable men, and a proof is what it takes to convince even an unreasonable man. With the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning." That problem was nicely captured by Anthony Kenny of Oxford University. He writes, "A proponent of the Big Bang theory, at least if he is an atheist, must believe that the universe came from nothing and by nothing." But surely that doesn't make sense. For as the philosopher of science Bernhard Konitscheider points out, such a conclusion is in head-on collision with the most successful ontological commitment in the history of science, namely the metaphysical principle that out of nothing, nothing comes. So, why does the universe exist instead of just nothing? Where did it come from? There must have been a cause which brought the universe into being. We can summarize our argument thus far as follows. 1, whatever begins to exist has a cause. 2, the universe began to exist. 3, therefore, the universe has a cause. Now, as the cause of space and time, this cause must be an uncaused, timeless, spaceless, immaterial being of unfathomable power. Moreover, it must be personal as well. Why? Because this cause must be beyond space and time. Therefore, it cannot be physical or material. Now, there are only two kinds of things that fit that description. Either abstract objects, like numbers, or else a transcendent intelligent mind. But abstract objects can't cause anything. Therefore, it follows that the cause of the universe is a transcendent personal mind.